My psycho mom never wanted me to have a girlfriend because she should be the only woman in my life. So when I brought over my first ever girlfriend, she exploded and made her cry. That was my breaking point, and I went nuclear. Within a few months, my mom was begging for forgiveness and telling us she'll do anything to restore the relationship. Ever since I was a kid, my mom made it crystal clear to me that she would come before my wife. And so, my dream of having a wife I loved was always dependent on my mother accepting her and liking her too. When I entered high school, I wanted to start dating, but every time I showed a picture of a girl I liked to my mom, she'd shut it down, saying I didn't need a girlfriend because she should be the only woman in my life. I knew deep down that what she was doing was wrong, but I pushed it away because I never wanted to make my mom upset. Fast forward 7 years later, I'm now 26, and at the last family gathering I brought over my first ever girlfriend. I was positive she would be the girl my mom accepted. She was studying to be a veterinarian, was drop-dead gorgeous, and was a national level swimmer in high school. She kept reassuring me that things would be okay, and that my mom would love her. For a second, I actually believed her. So when I knocked on my parents' door, I had more confidence than ever. But then my mom opened the door. "Hey mom, I would like you to meet my girlfriend, Kate." "What is this word doing here with my precious baby boy?" she interrupted, yelling. Both mine and Kate's faces deflated, and I tried to say something. "Mom, please just give her a chance." "No, she doesn't get to just come into our house. She knows she's not good enough for you, doesn't she?" She turned to Kate. I saw Kate holding back tears, and I felt so many emotions overcome me at once. Anger, embarrassment, hatred, everything. I told Kate we were going back to my car, and as I took her hand, my mom began speaking again. "Where are you going, honey? You're coming in. It's only this W word who can't." I stood in shock. I wanted to scream, but I kept my mouth shut and walked back to the car with Kate. My mom's voice got louder the more we walked away, as she was now getting angry at me for choosing Kate over her. The second we got back to my car, Kate broke down. She started crying, telling me this has never happened to her before, and she lunged into me asking if she was really such a bad girlfriend. I reassured her, and it's while I was holding her that I asked myself something. If I was my mom, would I raise my son and treat my girlfriend the way she does? And the answer was no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have this weird, borderline gross obsession of isolating me from every single girl who has come near me. I wouldn't have stopped me from going to my favorite band's concert when I was 17 because my female cousin was going. I wouldn't have demanded I attend a boys-only high school. I wouldn't have shot down every girl I have ever tried bringing home. And I certainly wouldn't react this way to my son bringing over a girl as intelligent and beautiful and kind as Kate is. At that moment, for the first time in my life, I began fully resenting my mom. I comforted Kate, kissing her forehead while she cried, telling her it was okay, and as soon as she calmed down, I stormed out of the car and headed straight up to my mom's front door. She opened it, and as soon as she saw me, a smile formed on her face. "You made the right choice, hon." "Fing, shut up." Her face went white when I interrupted her. "I don't understand." "No, I don't understand," I interrupted her again. "What is wrong with you? Are you in love with me or something? Do you fantasize about me? Is that why you used to come into my room at night and cuddle me? Is that why you can't let me see a single girl in my life? Is that why you forced me to cut off every single female relative?" My mom was stumped. Her face became even paler, and for a second I actually thought my words were connecting with her, until of course, she turned sour again. "That's ridiculous. I just want you to understand that I raised you, no one else. The girls you pick need my approval. It's not my fault I have high standards." "High standards," I exploded. "The first girl I ever brought over, you threatened to cull her if she didn't leave your baby boy to you and you only." "Oh, you're exaggerating," she said in her usual dismissive tone. "No, I'm not, Mom. I hate you. I never want to see you again. I want you to know that. I'm in love with Kate. She's going to be my girlfriend, and hopefully my wife, and the mother of my kids, and you're not stopping it." I didn't even let her respond. I walked out and started heading back to the car. I got back in, where Kate was wiping the last of the tears off her face, but as I put the key in, I heard Kate, "Oh my God, is that your mom?" My mom was running out of the house and towards my car. I revved up the engine as fast as I could, but it wasn't fast enough. My mom was by the window, and she was punching it, screaming at me to roll it down, but I didn't. I just started driving. On our way home, I was furious. My mom kept calling me. Kate was telling me she's sorry for embarrassing me and asking me if I was sure I still liked her, but all the noise around me simply came in one ear out the other, because I was going to have a relationship with Kate and I was going to make my mom back off. But then it hit me. I hadn't really dealt with her at all yet. The situation with my mom was far from over, and Kate seemed to sense my anxiety as we drove back to my apartment. "Your mom needs serious help, Matt," she said quietly, squeezing my hand as we pulled into my parking spot. I nodded, still seething with anger, but also feeling an unexpected wave of guilt wash over me, not for standing up to my mom, but for allowing her behavior to continue unchecked for so many years. Once inside my apartment, Kate and I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained from the confrontation. My phone continued to buzz incessantly with notifications from my mother, who had now escalated to sending rapid-fire text messages, ranging from guilt-tripping, "How could you do this to me after everything I've sacrificed?" to outright threats about what she'd do if I chose that woman over her. I finally muted my phone and tossed it aside, pulling Kate closer to me as she rested her head on my shoulder. We sat in silence for a while before Kate suggested that I might benefit from talking to someone professional about my relationship with my mom. "This isn't normal. You know that, right?" she whispered, and I nodded, the reality of my upbringing becoming clearer with each passing moment. That night, night, neither of us slept well. Kate was still processing the verbal assault she'd endured, and I kept waking up from nightmares where my mother was chasing us through endless hallways. By morning, I had 47 missed calls, 29 voicemails, and over 100 text messages, all from my mom. Most disturbing was her final message sent at 4:27 a.m. "I'm coming over to talk sense into you. That girl has poisoned your mind against me." I immediately called my dad, who sounded exhausted when he answered. "Your mother didn't come home last night," he sighed, and I felt my stomach drop. "She's been driving around looking for your place. I tried to stop her, but you know how she gets." I thanked him quickly and hung up, rushing to lock all the windows and doors, while Kate watched with growing concern. "We should call the police," she suggested, but I hesitated, not wanting to escalate the situation further. That hesitation proved costly when, less than 20 minutes later, frantic pounding shook my front door. "Matthew James Wilson, open this door right now!" My mother's voice echoed through the apartment. Kate froze mid-step, her eyes wide with fear, and I motioned for her to stay back while I approached the door cautiously. Through the peephole, I could see my mother's distorted face, her eyes wild, and her hair disheveled as she continued pounding. "Mom, you need to leave," I called through the door, trying to keep my voice steady. "I told you yesterday, I'm not discussing this anymore." Her response was immediate and chilling. "If you don't open this door in 5 seconds, I'm calling the police and telling them your girlfriend attacked me." I looked back at Kate, who was already dialing 911 on her phone, nodding at me to keep my mother talking. "Mom, you need help," I said firmly. "And this behavior isn't normal. You can't threaten people and stalk me to my apartment." The pounding suddenly stopped, and for a moment I thought she might have left, but then I heard a jingling sound that made my blood run cold. Keys. With horror, I remembered that my parents had a spare key to my apartment from when they helped me move in. I lunged for the deadbolt, just as my mother was inserting her key in the lock, managing to secure it before she could enter. Her scream of frustration pierced through the door as she resumed her assault on the wood. "You ungrateful child, after everything I've done for you." Kate was speaking quietly but urgently into her phone, giving my address to the emergency dispatcher and explaining the situation. I backed away from the door as my mother's tirade continued, her threats becoming increasingly bizarre and disturbing. "I'll tell everyone what you did to me when you were 13, she shrieked, making me frown in confusion. I had no idea what she was referring to, but the implication was clearly meant to be threatening. 10 excruciatingly long minutes later, we heard sirens approaching, and my mother's ranting abruptly ceased. From the window, I watched as 2 police officers approached her in the hallway, speaking calmly while she gesticulated wildly toward my door. When they knocked, I opened it cautiously, keeping the chain on as I explained the situation. My mother immediately launched into tears, playing the role of concerned parent with an Oscar-worthy performance. "My son's girlfriend has been manipulating him," she sobbed to the female officer, who regarded her with professional detachment. "She's isolating him from his family who loves him." The officers separated us, one speaking with my mother in the hallway, while the other interviewed Kate and me inside the apartment. I showed the officer the barrage of texts and calls, explained the confrontation from yesterday, and how my mother had shown up unannounced at my apartment, threatening to make false allegations. The officer, a steady-eyed man named Peterson, listened carefully before sighing. "Family situations can be complicated," he said diplomatically, "but what you're describing sounds like harassment. Would you like to file a restraining order?" I hesitated, looking at Kate, who gave me an encouraging nod. "Yes," I finally said, feeling both relieved and heartbroken. "I think that's necessary at this point." What followed was an exhausting bureaucratic process of statements, paperwork, and court appearances. My mother fought the restraining order viciously, hiring an expensive lawyer who painted her as a loving mother concerned about her son's well-being. Fortunately, her erratic behavior during the proceedings, including an outburst where she called the female judge a homewrecker who probably stole someone's husband, only strengthened my case. The judge granted a 1-year restraining order, requiring my mother to stay at least 500 feet away from both me and Kate. My father called me that evening, sounding more defeated than I'd ever heard him. "Your mother's not well, Matt," he said softly. "She's refused to admit it for years, but this might finally be the wake-up call she needs." He explained that he'd convinced her to see a therapist, though she maintained it was only to prove how that girl had brainwashed me. In the weeks that followed, Kate and I settled into a strange new normal. Without my mother's constant interference, I discovered parts of myself I never knew existed, interests and opinions that had been suppressed by her controlling influence. Kate was incredibly patient, encouraging me to explore these newfound aspects of my personality while also suggesting I might benefit from therapy myself. I resisted at first, still carrying the stigma my mother had always attached to mental health support, but eventually agreed to try a session. Dr. Raymond, a calm-voiced man with kind eyes, helped me understand concepts like emotional incest and covert narcissism that perfectly described my relationship with my mother. "What you're experiencing is grief," he explained during our 3rd session. "Not just for the healthy relationship you never had with your mother, but also for the parts of yourself you weren't allowed to develop." Those words resonated deeply. deeply, and I found myself crying unexpectedly in Kate's arms that night, mourning the childhood and adolescence I should have had. 6 months into the restraining order, my father called with surprising news. My mother had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and was taking medication along with attending twice-weekly therapy sessions. "She's different, Matt," he said cautiously. "Not completely changed, but she's starting to recognize her behavior was inappropriate." I remained skeptical, but agreed to receive periodic updates about her progress. Kate and I grew closer through the ordeal, our relationship strengthened by the challenges we'd faced together. On our 1-year anniversary, I proposed during a quiet dinner at home, having asked her parents for their blessing the week before. Her father had pulled me aside afterward, gripping my shoulder firmly. "You've shown real courage standing up to your mother," he said. "That tells me everything I need to know about how you'll treat my daughter." We decided on a small wedding, inviting only close friends and family, including my father, who came alone. My mother had been informed of the engagement, but respected the restraining order by sending a card with a surprisingly thoughtful message. "I'm working on myself so that someday I might earn back the privilege of being in your life. Congratulations to you both." The wedding day itself was everything we could have hoped for, a celebration unmarred by drama or tension. Kate was radiant in her simple white dress, and I couldn't believe my luck as we exchanged vows beneath a canopy of autumn leaves. During the reception, my father approached us with a gift box and an envelope. "Your mother wanted you to have this," he explained, handing me the envelope first. She wrote it with her therapist, and they both signed it to show it was part of her treatment. Inside was a 3-page letter containing something I never thought I'd see, a genuine apology. My mother acknowledged her inappropriate behavior, took responsibility without excuses, and expressed hope for eventual reconciliation while respecting our boundaries. The gift box contained a family heirloom, my grandmother's watch that my mother had always refused to part with. "A gesture of letting go," my father explained, his eyes misty. After our honeymoon, I agreed to a carefully controlled meeting with my mother in her therapist's office. The woman who greeted me bore little resemblance to the wild-eyed creature who had pounded on my door nearly 2 years earlier. She was subdued, speaking carefully and respecting my personal space. "I know I can never undo the harm I caused," she said, hands clasped tightly in her lap, "but I'm committed to being better, for myself and for any relationship we might rebuild in the future." It was the first of many monitored sessions, gradually transitioning to short coffee meetings with strict boundaries. Kate eventually joined some of these meetings, her presence a testament to her extraordinary compassion and strength. 3 years after our wedding, when Kate announced she was pregnant with our first child, we faced the difficult decision of how much access my mother would have to her grandchild. After much discussion, we agreed on supervised visits only, a condition my mother accepted with humility that would have been unimaginable before her treatment. The day our daughter Lily was born, my mother waited patiently in the hospital waiting room until we invited her in. Her hands trembled as she held her granddaughter for the first time, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for this second chance," she whispered, careful to return the baby to Kate after just a few minutes. Our relationship with my mother will never be conventionally normal, but we've established a new paradigm based on mutual respect and firm boundaries. I still attend therapy regularly, working through the lingering effects of my upbringing, while Kate has become an advocate for families affected by personality disorders, starting a support group at the veterinary clinic where she now works as a senior practitioner. As for Lily, she's growing into a confident, joyful child who knows she is loved unconditionally, not as an extension of ourselves, but as her own person with thoughts, feelings, and dreams we're privileged to nurture. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all, breaking the cycle and creating a family defined by healthy love rather than unhealthy obsession. So that's how I dealt with my mom, not with dramatic confrontations or permanent estrangement, but with boundaries, professional help, and the unwavering support of the woman who became my wife. It wasn't quick or easy, and there were many setbacks along the way, but the journey transformed not just my relationship with my mother, but my understanding of myself and what it means to truly love someone. I didn't fully grasp the depth of that transformation until my daughter was born. I remember standing in the hospital room, this tiny human bundled in my arms. My wife smiled at us from the bed, exhausted but radiant. My mom hovered near the doorway, uncertain for perhaps the first time in her life. I invited her closer, watched her eyes fill with tears as she met her granddaughter. That moment crystallized something important for me. The boundaries I'd established weren't walls to keep her out. They were guardrails to help us navigate a healthier path forward. My therapist had prepared me for this day. We'd talked extensively about breaking generational patterns. I needed to be vigilant about not repeating my mother's mistakes, while also not overcompensating to the point of neglect. Finding that balance became my daily mission. The early months with the baby were a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. My mom offered to help, and I agreed with clear conditions. She could come twice weekly for 3 hours, no unscheduled visits, and no undermining our parenting decisions. She pushed back at first, testing the boundaries like always. I stood firm, without anger, and her first visit was tense and awkward. She critiqued how I held the baby, and she questioned our feeding schedule. My wife caught my eye across the room, our silent communication system in full effect. I took a deep breath and redirected rather than confronted. The next visit went better. Mom brought homemade food and actually asked before picking up the baby. Small victories. And progress isn't linear though. A month later, she showed up unannounced at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. I answered the door in my boxers, dark circles under my eyes from a night of colic screams. Mom pushed past me with a bag of baby clothes she'd bought. I stopped her in the hallway, told her she needed to leave and call later for a scheduled visit. Her face crumpled like tissue paper. Old guilt came rushing back, that familiar undertow, but I stood my ground. And later that day, she called and apologized. That was a first. And we rescheduled for Tuesday afternoon. The real breakthrough came during a family dinner when my daughter was 6 months old. Mom started her usual narrative about how no one had ever loved me like she did, how she'd sacrificed everything for me. I felt my wife tense beside me, protective as always. But instead of letting it slide or fighting back, I tried something new. I acknowledged her love and sacrifices. Then I gently suggested there were many ways to love someone. The conversation shifted. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Years of therapy had taught me to recognize the wounded child inside my mother. Her own upbringing had been harsh and conditional. She'd never learned healthy attachment. That understanding didn't excuse her behavior, but helped me respond with compassion rather than reactivity. As my daughter grew from infant to toddler, the dynamics shifted again. Mom became obsessed with being the favorite grandmother. She brought excessive gifts, and she competed with my in-laws for attention. I implemented a gift limit policy for everyone. Mom complied, reluctantly, but she complied. And she started therapy herself around this time. Never mentioned it directly to me. My aunt let it slip during a family gathering. I didn't press Mom about it, and some journeys need privacy. My daughter's 3rd birthday party became an unexpected milestone. Mom helped with decorations without taking over, and she deferred to our plans. She actually collaborated with my mother-in-law on the cake. My wife squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes saying everything. That night, after everyone left, I found myself sorting through old photos, pictures of me at 3, my mother's arms wrapped around me possessively. I studied my face in those images, and the anxiety in my eyes, the tense little shoulders. Then I looked at photos from that day, of my daughter laughing openly, moving freely between all the adults who loved her. The contrast hit me hard, and I was breaking the cycle. This work affected my career too, and I became more assertive at the office, set clearer boundaries with clients, stopped taking on impossible deadlines to prove my worth. My boss noticed the change and respected it, promoted me. The extra money helped us buy our first house, a modest 3-bedroom with a yard. Mom offered to help with the down payment. I thanked her, but declined. Financial entanglements had always been her favorite leash. The house needed work, while weekends of painting and repairs. Mom showed up in old clothes, ready to help without criticism. She and my wife planted a garden together, small green shoots pushing through dark soil, and like hope made visible. My brother visited that summer, and he'd moved across the country years ago. Minimal contact with Mom. He watched our new family dynamic with wary confusion, asked me how I could stand to have her around at all. I explained about boundaries, and about the work we'd both done. He just shook his head, said I was a better person than him. I'm not though, and just someone who made different choices. The holidays used to be battlegrounds, and Mom demanding certain traditions, meltdowns if plans changed. And that year, we hosted Thanksgiving, made it potluck style. Mom brought her famous stuffing without insisting everyone acknowledge its superiority. She helped clean up afterward, and she left when she said she would. My wife cried after she went home, and said she'd never thought this was possible. I hadn't either, honestly. Raising a child while healing my own childhood wounds proved complicated. I found myself overreacting to normal developmental stages. My daughter's first tantrum triggered something primal in me. I walked away, hands shaking, and called my therapist the next day. We worked through it, developed strategies for separating my past from her present. My mother noticed these moments too. Once, after witnessing me struggle with my daughter's defiance, she approached carefully, said simply that I was doing a good job, that I was a good father. Those words shouldn't have meant so much coming from her, but they did. When my son was born 2 years later, the family dynamics shifted again. Mom seemed more relaxed this time, and less desperate to prove herself. She'd established her place in our family system, knew the boundaries would hold, and knew her role was secure if limited. My father had remained peripheral through all this. His presence in my childhood had been like furniture, there but unresponsive. And he called when my son was born, actually sounded interested, and started visiting more often, started talking more. Mom and Dad in the same room still generated tension. Some wounds never fully heal, but they managed civil interactions centered around the grandchildren. My therapist helped me understand I couldn't fix their relationship, only navigate my own connections to them. Work stress peaked when my son was 6 months old. A major project went sideways, and deadlines loomed impossible. Sleep deprivation clouded everything, and old patterns beckoned. Work myself to exhaustion, and prove my worth through productivity. I caught myself this time, and requested deadline extensions, delegated where possible, and made it home for dinner most nights. My wife's career was taking off too, and we juggled childcare and household responsibilities, sometimes smoothly, sometimes with friction. Mom offered to watch the kids one afternoon a week. Consistent, reliable help, and she followed our parenting guidelines without comment. One day I arrived to pick them up and found her reading to them. No pressure, no performance, and just presence, just love with open hands. The contrast with my own childhood stories hit me. Friendship became possible between us around this time. Not just mother-son obligation, but actual enjoyment of each other's company. We discovered shared interests in gardening and history documentaries, simple pleasures without emotional manipulation. And my daughter started kindergarten. Mom came for the first day photos. She stood back, letting us have our moment while still being included. Later, she showed me a photo of my first day, same age. Her gripping my hand so tight my fingers were white, history not repeating itself. And my brother's wedding brought extended family together. Old tensions surfaced immediately, and aunts who enabled mom's worst behaviors, cousins who remembered how she'd treated me, side comments and raised eyebrows when they saw us interact civilly. Mom felt it too, and grew withdrawn at the reception. I found her alone on the venue's patio. For once, I didn't feel responsible for her emotions. I sat with her briefly and acknowledged things were different now.